In the late 1950s, tuning and racing legend Carlo Abarth transformed the original Fiat 500 by increasing the compression ratio, popping on a Weber downdraft carburetor, gas flowing the head and opening up the exhaust. The result was a tiny sub-500 kilogram car with double the horsepower and fierce performance. Abarth dubbed it the 595. Almost 60 years later, the Abarth 595 lives again, albeit in much more sophisticated, much more modern and also much more powerful guise. It's based on the latest generation Fiat 500 and it links the quirky character of that car to a whole whack of performance and a soundtrack to match. Like the normal Fiat 500, the Abarth 595 is a tiny car. At 3.66 meters long, 1.63 meters wide, and 1.49 meters tall, it's even smaller than small performance hatches like the Opel Adam S and the Ford Fiesta ST. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for in character. This 595 Turismo is unmistakably sporty and unashamedly over the top. It gets a very distinctive body kit with large lower air intakes, deeper sills and a very prominent rear diffuser with large big bore exhausts. It is definitely a car that wants to go and go quickly. The model under scrutiny here is the Cabrio version of the 595 Turismo, which replaces the standard tin top with an electrically operated canvas roof that folds back at the push of a button. It's more like a large sunroof than a real cabriolet, and it allows fresh air motoring. It does create the illusion of space in a rather intimate cabin. These bulky bucket seats are comfortable enough and there is ample leg and headroom, but the rear accommodation is cramped at best and very difficult to get to as well. However, let's face it, nobody buys an Abarth 595 for practical reasons. On the positive side, the cabin execution is bright and attractive with a colour-matching fascia, clear instrumentation and a certain retro charm. The seats feel perched too high but offer decent comfort, while the deep 185-litre boot is a little awkward to access. The standard equipment list embraces an extensive array of features ranging from climate control, central locking and Bluetooth to electric windows and mirrors, a multi-speaker sound system and a trip computer. But the 595 is much more about dynamics than it is about comfort or luxury, as that Abarth badge signifies. The focus very much on performance. The engine up front, a 1.4-litre turbocharged unit credited with 118 kilowatt of maximum power linked to 230 newton meters of torque, and drives through the front wheels, in this instance through a 5-speed manual gearbox. But the most telling statistic is the power-to-weight ratio. At 114 kilowatt per tonne, the 595 is a genuine pocket rocket. It dashes from 0 to 100 in 7.4 seconds and reaches a top speed of 210 kilometers an hour, although that short wheelbase and a choppy ride aren't particularly conducive to high-speed stability. To cope with all that urge, the 595 gets a lower, stiffer suspension with Coney rear dampers as well as bigger brakes. The 17-inch wheels are shod with 205/40 performance rubber. Not surprisingly, the 595 feels lively and exciting. Floor the throttle and you hear a growl from the exhaust and you experience a spurt of acceleration. The ride almost too taut even here on the racetrack and certainly out on the open road. And the steering is surprisingly lazy on turn-in, while the electric power steering means there's a feeling of numbness as well. However, when you really get going, none of that matters. It's just a lot of fun to drive. The 595 features Fiat's torque transfer control, which is effectively an electronic limited slip diff that vectors power between the front wheels for optimum traction. It also partially switches off the traction control. The result is much improved cornering as well as reduced understeer. During normal day-to-day use, the ride quality can feel too uncompromising, while the turning circle is much wider than the standard 500, which affects maneuverability in tight spaces such as shopping mall parking lots. That said, the 595 Turismo does not belong in parking lots. It's a real little thoroughbred and it's at its best tackling challenging country roads, twisty mountain passes or, of course, the hot tar of a racetrack. It's hardly spacious and it's certainly not practical. It's also expensive, but in terms of fun, it's a real star. And I think that Carlo Abarth would be proud. A lively turbo engine, compact dimensions and low mass all translate into an unashamedly sporty machine while retaining the character and individuality so typical of the Fiat 500 range. On the downside, the little Abarth is expensive and impractical, but who cares given how entertaining it is to drive.